Hello and welcome to Chuck's Culture Channel, your YouTube home for lively conversation on the lively arts here in St. Louis and beyond. And in this episode, I'm talking with conductor Daniela Candillari. She has been principal conductor at Opera Theater of St. Louis for 3 seasons now, and her contract has just been renewed through the 2028 season. When we recorded this, she was preparing to conduct Mozart's Don Giovanni at Opera Arizona in April before returning to Opera Theater of St. Louis here to conduct the company's premiere of Handel's Julius Caesar, as well as the annual Center Stage concert before concluding the season at Music Academy of the West with Bizet's Carmen, which she has done here in St. Louis, in July. For more information about what she's doing now and when, check out the link to her website in the video description field below. And now on to the interview. So there we are. You now know that I'm talking to Daniela Candillari, and you know that her contract at Opera Theater has just been renewed until 2028. So that gives you a lot of artistic freedom, I would think.
Well, thank you, first of all, Chuck. So great to talk to you.
Same here.
It's a great collaboration that we have at OTSL with James Robinson, our artistic director, and Patricia Rossett, director of the Jardine Young Artist Program. And I'm just thrilled to be continuing our collaboration also with Andrew Jorgensen, our general director, and with the entire staff that we have at OTSL, including also our fantastic colleagues in St. Louis Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're looking ahead at next seasons. We're talking about repertoire. We're talking about exciting pieces without giving too much away. But the conversation is always about what is our identity as a company? What do we continue, traditions that we continue? And also, what do our audiences want, and
Yes.
what is the common thread between all of those things?
Yeah. Now, folks who may or may not have seen you at Opera Theater before may or may not know that you've conducted a wide variety of things for the company. I mean, you first came to my attention when you were conducting the New Works Bold Voices Lab outdoors, the alfresco opera season.
Yes.
And I was really impressed by that, and then by your subsequent appearance at the St. Louis Symphony. So Opera Theater apparently also feels the same way, because you've been conducting for them a lot since then.
And then, yeah, 21 was my guest appearance in the New Works Bold Voices, the season that we fondly call the parking lot season,
Yes.
which I think has a soft spot for many of us. And then there was a concert with St. Louis Symphony that followed end of their season as well as the end of our season. And, in that year 21, it was, I think, any possibility of making music was just so exciting.
Yeah.
And I remember with St. Louis Symphony, that was the first concert that I think was the largest orchestra they've had in that sort of post-COVID year on stage. And there was palpable excitement from everyone, being able to be on stage, being able to have a fuller complement of the orchestra. I think the only instrument we didn't have was piano and tuba on the stage. But that was it. And following that, in 22, we did Carmen at Opera Theater of St. Louis. 23, I did Tosca. And this season we have Julius Caesar at OTSL, including, of course, every season there is a center stage concert, which is always a huge variety of repertoire. And it's also a fun program to put together, again, with my artistic collaborators and colleagues. We always try to do a variety of repertoire, starting from really, really early, sometimes Renaissance, sometimes Baroque, but also we try to go as close back to as maybe pieces that were written yesterday. So to give everybody a little bit of a taste of trajectory of opera and of different musical styles and just the possibilities that opera has in terms of repertoire and stories and different movements.
Now, I want to ask, as principal conductor, I assume you have some input into what the season is like, but what is that collaboration process like?
Well, we always start about we start talking about what is the season and what are the operas maybe that we haven't done? What are the operas that we would like to do? And again, it's a conversation with James Robinson and Andrew Jorgensen and Patricia Rosette. And of course our administrative staff that help support all these decisions. So it's really about looking at maybe pieces that haven't been done at Opera Theatre of St. Louis yet. This season we have Julius Caesar, which is the first time that
never
we're
seen
presenting.
that here. Yeah,
exactly. And earlier in the season, I guess in December of 23, I did a little presentation about Julius Caesar. And when we do it in 2024, in a couple of months, it will have been 300 years and 3 months since the piece premiered in London, which is a fascinating. I get really nerdy about that stuff, so I think it's a fascinating information to think about, sort of how this piece was perceived then, how ahead of its time it was in many ways, and to sort of put it into our perspective and into our time and see what does it mean to us nowadays, what challenges does it pose, what new things and new insights can we come into. And this season as well, we have Galileo Galilei, which is another new piece for Opera Theatre of St. Louis. It was premiered in 2002. It's an opera written by Philip Glass that premiered at the Goodman Theater in Chicago. So in terms of opera, I think it's really interesting also to put that into context, that Philip Glass himself said this in a podcast that I recently listened to, that he likes to think about opera as a musical theater piece. So as a medium that involves all different sorts of elements that make opera alive. And I think it's just a fascinating way to think about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And then obviously, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's sort of like Wagner's idea, yeah, Gesamtkunstwerk, it's all one.
Exactly. It's a mix of all these beautiful art forms, from scenery, costume, music, language, acting, everything comes together in opera. And I think that's what makes it actually a really, really exciting and fun art form.
Yeah. Hey, talking about Julius Caesar, Julio Cesare, whatever. This is it's a Baroque opera. Baroque opera is a very kind of specialized form for those of us 300 years later. So what are the challenges specifically? And I mean, how do you deal with making something like that work for a 21st century audience? Because the conventions are all radically different now, theatrically.
Yes. So there's a lot of research, a lot of thinking, a lot of sort of putting yourself in, or me, myself, putting myself into minds of people who have done this work, and just sort of thinking, well, what made them make this choice? Why is this? And with Julius Caesar, it was such a spectacular piece when it premiered in 1724. It was the biggest orchestra Handel has used. It is the first time that he has put a horn as obbligato instrument into an aria. The orchestra was expanded by 4 horns. Even though I found
was quite a lot, yes.
Exactly. I mean, these are there is an incredible intimacy in Baroque operas, but also when we think about it, it was actually kind of a spectacle back then, because it was what everybody wanted to go and see. And it was also interesting to read about actually Jane Glover's book about Handel in London. It was so interesting to read about these little comparisons between the theaters and what theater was designed for what purpose, and how the audiences responded to all of these things. I mean, it's sort of, I feel like it's a look back into a history, but from a modern perspective, and figuring out how does it relate to us, and what is it meaning for us today. I think our audiences know what they want, and they understand works, even if they maybe have not been integrated in opera since early age. But I think when they see a good piece, they know it. And I agree with that statement.
I just feel respect the composer, respect the lyricist,
exactly,
and respect your
exactly.
Yeah. My friend once said the way you do Shakespeare is just don't get in his way.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what's going on in the Opera Theatre St. Louis side. But as I said earlier, whoever is watching this now, you could be watching this at any time from anywhere. And you, Daniela, have an international career. So what are some of the other exciting things you have coming up for people who might be nowhere near St. Louis right now as they're watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this season, I just came back from an engagement at Yale University. We were doing Rake's Progress
Oh, okay.
by Stravinsky. And somebody was asking me the same question, what do I have coming up? And my next opera is Don Giovanni at
Mm.
Arizona Opera, and then Julius Caesar in St. Louis, and then I actually do Carmen at Music Academy of the West, and that takes me to half of the summer. So that's next couple of months. But sort of looking back, the season started with two world premieres. So I have this season, it's this really interesting arc of starting with pieces that were written last year or 2 years ago. And it's sort of going back in time. So with Rake's Progress, there's this connection to Don Giovanni, and then going further back, and then moving up ahead into Bizet and Carmen, which is again one of my favorite operas. But those are the things that are happening in the next couple of months. Next season, St. Louis Symphony, I think you saw this announce their season.
Hmm.
So I'll be coming back in January for a concert with the St. Louis Symphony. We're doing sort of a New World, if you want, program. We're starting with Barber's Overture to the School for Scandal, which was Barber's first bigger orchestral piece that he wrote in 1931. And it was really interesting to find out that it was in 1950s, it was a regularly performed piece with American orchestras. I also believe there's a recording of it with Leonard Slatkin and St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. I think I saw that
Very likely.
recently in my
Slatkin.
research.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Slatkin did a
he
number.
did. Yeah, exactly. And we're doing a world premiere by young composer Nina Shekar,
Oh, yes, the
accordion
accordion
concerto.
concerto. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I've played chamber music with accordion, but I've never conducted a concerto for accordion, so this will be really, really exciting. And then we're doing Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, which is one of my favorite pieces, and it's such a staple of symphonic repertoire, of American symphonic repertoire and Slavic symphonic repertoire, and this combination of combining again contemporary music with traditional music and Slavic music with American music is one of my passions. So I'm just thrilled about that.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, well,
Thank you.
listen, that is all great news. And by the way, folks out there, as you're watching this, if you want to know more about what Daniela is up to, look down here, down below in the video description box. I will have a link to her website there, as well as to Opera Theater St. Louis and the St. Louis Symphony. And anything else you want me to add down in that box.
Absolutely. I forgot to, in talking about our season at Opera Theater of St. Louis, I forgot to mention three more things.
Oh, okay.
Two more productions, and obviously our center stage concert
Oh, I always
with our
love
young
that.
artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our young artists were just announced yesterday, so it's a thrilling group of people, and we have another fun repertoire, fun evening in our theater planned. And then we opened the season with Rossini's famous Barber of Seville with a comedy that I'm really, really excited about. All of our guest conductors this year, Jonathan Brandani, who is doing Barber of Seville, Jose Luis Gomez, who is conducting La Bohème, following immediately Barber of Seville, and Kwame Riot, who is conducting Galileo Galilei, are all making their Opera Theater St. Louis debuts.
Ah.
And I'm just thrilled to welcome them and bring them and introduce them to St. Louis. I haven't mentioned this, but I think St. Louis has certainly become a musical home, but I also feel it's sort of my second residency.
Oh,
So
nice.
any chance I have to invite people to St. Louis and introduce them to the charm that St. Louis has, I'm just thrilled.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But Daniela Candillari, thanks so much for taking time from your schedule to talk to me. And all you folks out there on the internet, please tell your friends about Chuck's Culture Channel. I do not accept ads. So the only way I can get anyone to know about this is if you spread the word for me. So please do that. And we'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.